You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
It only takes one step, twist, or crunch to know something doesn't feel right. Essentia Health's orthopedic and sports medicine team gets you back to doing what you love with commitment, resilience, intention. We're here to keep you moving forward. Visit essentiahealth.org to learn more about orthopedics and sports medicine, like nowhere else.
Hello and welcome to the Duluth News Tribune's Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat writer at the News Tribune.
And I'm Zach Schneider, the television voice of UMD Hockey on My 9 Sports.
Joining us this week on the podcast, do we need to pause? Bruce, we need to pause. Zach forgot who he was for a moment.
That was great.
Forgot I'm supposed to talk there. I was like, yeah, and?
I was like, yeah. You're like, oh, yeah.
What's your point?
Like, what are we going to talk about, Matt?
Yeah. Bruce Ciskie of KDAL is back with us this week because, we're desperate for a guest.
Must be. So
that's why Bruce is on. In shorts, by the way, on Monday, October 21st in the afternoon.
Gorgeous out.
Not that gorgeous. So we got Bruce on this week. We're desperate for a guest. Zach and I honestly have had some pretty packed schedules taking us out of towns for things other than Bulldog hockey. Zach has a race that's full that he's promoting.
If it's full, why are you promoting it?
I don't know. Keep showing up.
I got some appointments, doctor's appointments outside of Duluth and stuff. So our schedule's been a little packed. We're squeezing Bruce in here. I also decided to bring Bruce on because we're sensing some frustration within the Bulldogs hockey fan base. More than the men than the women. The women are level-headed right now. Some of y'all are losing it on the men's side. So,
and when things are going bad, you call me. I mean,
and when things are going
sense.
bad, we're going to call the person
Let's make it worse.
Yeah, let's make it worse.
Right.
The person who's egging people on social media. Let's bring them onto the podcast. So we're going to break down the good and the bad this week and answer your questions that you submitted over social media. I used to do this post-game column for the DNT called Thumbs Up, Thumbs Down, 3 stars. I stopped doing it in part because after writing a gamer, I wouldn't get to the column. I wouldn't get the column up till like midnight or later. And I can't stay up that late anymore. I'm just getting old and have kids who wake me up at 6 a.m. As Zach nods his head of also with young children who wakes them up. Bruce here has older kids who sleep till noon.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. But I've always kind of wanted to bring this onto the podcast in some form. So we're going to give it a try here this week. Let us know what you think, whether you like it or you think this is awful and it needs to die and never happen again. Please let us know. So we're going to start with the UMD women. They're ranked 5th in the country at 5-3 overall. I have them 3rd I'm a USCHO voter. I have them 3rd, and I'm just going to state that's the correct ranking based on, it's not like opinion, it's just based on who has beaten who with Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, UMD. The Buckeyes are 2nd, but they lost twice to UMD. So I don't know. Can't explain what other voters are doing. But UMD women, like I said, they've swept Ohio State. They got a win over Colgate. They also lost 3 straight for a while there. That's when they slipped in the polls. They lost 1 to Colgate, got swept by Wisconsin. Wisconsin's sweeping everyone these days. And UMD swept St. Thomas this past weekend. What is everyone's thumbs up from the start of the 2024-2025 UMD women's hockey season? Bruce, I'm going to let you start.
I think it's Clara Van Weeren. It's a jack of all trades type of deal. You play center, okay. Play wing, okay. I can do that. I could be productive on the power play. They were 3 for 3 Friday. She had to handle all 3 goals. I think she's been tremendous in everything that they've asked her to do. She's not a perfect player. Nobody is. But she's harnessed the things that she does really well. And on top of that, she's also a really good leader for this team. So, your scoring leader, probably among their face-off leaders. And by the way, she's also a leader, a captain on this team that's playing pretty well. So I would say Clara Van Weeren.
Zach, what's your thumbs up?
I was going to say just Ev Gascon, but then watching Tindra Holm play against St. Thomas this past weekend, and I just went with the goalie rotation because not only has Ev been really good, she's really good against Ohio State. She kind of faltered a little bit, as did the entire team against Wisconsin. But then Holm was able to come in against St. Thomas, get a shutout victory on Saturday in the finale. And if she's able to do that against St. Thomas, Bemidji State, Mankato, St. Cloud State, those types of teams, and give Gascon a little bit of time to rest for some of those more prime-time, big-time matchups against the Minnesotas, Wisconsins of the world, Ohio State. That's going to be a big benefit. And Holm looked comfortable. I mean, we saw her when she was with Long Island at Amsoil. She played really well for Long Island in that series that they lost both games of. But if she's able to kind of just do her job on some of those other games, and then you don't have to wear Ev down throughout the duration of the season, I think it's going to work out really, really well. But I'll just give a thumbs up to the goalies at this point.
Yeah, I think the women are really strong in goal, and I think that's key. I don't know if they need Holm to be Haley McLeod like last year. I think, I think Ev's taken a step where if they needed her to play every game, she could. But we've heard all the coaches kind of talk about that they don't necessarily want to ride one goalie 30, 40 games a season. My thumbs up is Caitlin Kramer, and I appreciate the two of you for not picking her for yours. Caitlin Kramer's good at hockey.
She is.
To say the least. She's really good. She is a difference maker in every game, whether she scores or not. What she's able to do with that puck. Watching St. Thomas at times, just three players just swarm Kramer, and it leaves someone else open. She is fun to watch. She does have 3 goals and 4 assists through 8 games, 2 game winners. Obviously led that big comeback against Ohio State. I had mentioned to her, and I asked Clara first this question on Friday. Should Kramer take the puck to the net herself more? Because she's a phenomenal playmaker. We've seen her make some really good passes. But that's my only knock against Kramer right now is I tell her to be more selfish and drive that puck to the net herself, not necessarily, try and make the pass to a teammate, because she's got a heck of a shot. Man, with that puck, what I really like is her strength. It is tough and we heard some players talk about it this year already, how strong she is on the puck. She gets it. You're not getting it back. Reminds me a bit of Gabby Hughes, how strong she was going into the corners and that ability to. This is one of those no, don't do it. And then you're like, oh, that was awesome. When they do it, like skating into a pack of 3-4 defenders with the puck. That's usually one of the biggest no's. You pass it off, dump it in or something. Kramer can hold it, and she's great. So. Thumbs down thus far for the UMD women. Bruce, I'll start with you.
It's a lack of forward depth for me. And part of it is circumstance. Gabby Krause is not going to play this season. Obviously, you weren't planning on that when you're building out a roster, back last spring. And now Jenna Lowry missed this last weekend as well. And you're playing 10 forwards and you're doing it, no offense to St. Thomas. It's one thing to try to do that against St. Thomas, but they got the Gophers coming in a few weeks. They can't afford to be playing 10 forwards against the Gophers. I'm sorry. It's not going to go well. I feel like this is an issue. I know you had asked Laura about potentially adding somebody at semester break, and I have to think that it's got to be on their minds, right? I mean, it might not be their focus is getting the team ready to play games, but they've got this week off. They're self-scouting. They're working on some things. I have to think it's at least something they're talking about, because even if Jenna's not out long term, you're talking about 11 forwards, and you're playing against some teams that have some real depth. Wisconsin, it looks like, for example, has some significant depth this year that they maybe haven't had in previous years. Maybe a little top heavy in the lineup. Not this year. It's going to be, those are tough teams to play against when you're running 11 forwards and you're asking 18-year-old Caitlin Kramer to play the kind of minutes you're going to ask her to play, and ask her to play them at center, which is a demanding position. I think this could be a problem going forward. I hope it's not, but I think it could be.
So I checked with Laura Schuler after Saturday's game. Jenna Lowry, it sounds like they're going to get her back after they got a bye week here. It sounds like they're going to get her back after the bye. That's their hope. But right, Nina Steigoff leaving after 2 games, that hurts the team in terms of depth. I've had that same thought, like, I did. I asked Shu if they were going to go get someone. And the next question I should have asked that I've been thinking about is, in women's hockey, where do you get someone? It's not like men where you can maybe go find a 20-year-old in juniors who's playing real well, or call up a recruit early that's marinating at the junior level. Women's hockey doesn't have that. Now there are some overagers playing in Canada, North American Hockey Academy, places like that. There are some 19-year-olds out there that maybe you've had your eye on. So I'm curious if they do bring someone in, who it would be. I don't think they're going to bring whoever they bring in. It's pure depth, and I would think it would be a walk-on because you don't want to. They probably don't have scholarships available. I don't know what their cap situation is. No one has developed cap friendly or whatever yet for college hockey. Would love it if they did, but that'll be interesting. That was my actually top thumbs down. The one that Bruce picked was forward with depth. It's pretty obvious. So the other one I threw out there is scoring from the blue line. And it's been okay, but I think it can be better. UMD has 4 of their 20 goals have come from defensemen so far. 1 each from Nina Job-Smith, Tova Henderson, and Ida Carlson and Devin Millwater. 4 assists from Hannah Baskin. Nina has 3 assists, but without the depth at forward, they need the defenseman to not just pitch and assist. They're going to need them to start scoring goals because I don't think they have enough. I don't think they're getting enough from the blue line right now. It seems like it's all on Clara, Caitlin Kramer. Olivia Mobley's done well as well, but I think they're going to need more scoring from the blue line right now. We've seen Nina take a ton of shots, by the way. She's getting the puck through. She's just got to find a way now to get the puck in. Zach, what is your thumbs down?
I mean, the team's 5-3, and the 3-game losing streak they went through was not a bad 3-game losing streak. They lost on the road to Colgate. They lost on the road to Wisconsin twice. I mean, that's
a lot of people are going to lose to Wisconsin twice.
Yeah,
Minnesota just did.
Yeah. So then when you look back on it, like they're 5-3 at this point. This is almost like, other than the forward depth and maybe some of the scoring, but just watching the series against St. Thomas, they controlled those games from start to finish. The drop of the puck, they were the better team. They were more talented than St. Thomas. I thought the Tommies actually played a pretty plucky series, but part of it was because UMD waited until the third period to open up multi-goal leads. And they just can't do that because on Saturday, it really felt like St. Thomas was going to steal a point and find a way to get a goal when it was 1-0 until Millwater scored in the third period to make it 2-0, a little bit more comfortable. But UMD was far and away the better team all weekend, and they just couldn't put St. Thomas away early. And that leads to a couple things. One is you're 1 shot away on Saturday from losing valuable points and losing valuable pairwise ranking as well if St. Thomas was able to steal a tie or even a win in one of those games. But also what we're talking about now, Caitlin Kramer and Clara Van Wieren and your other top players have to play meaningful minutes late into the third period on Saturday against a team that you've dominated for 2 straight games but can't seem to put away. And so when they play those teams that, quite frankly, they're just better than, they have to find a way to be up by 2 or 3 late in those games and make it a little bit easier on themselves.
Yeah, and you mentioned not getting rest for, if you're going to be in tight games, you're not going to get, Caitlin Kramer and Clara Van Wieren and your top defensive pair. You're not going to get them maybe a little extra rest. But now you're actually, and this gets back to, I think, one point that, Zach, you brought up earlier, the goalie rotation. You might be hesitant all of a sudden to throw Tindra Holm in there. You're going to want to play your ace and have Gascon. So you're thinking, man, that was a tight game on Friday and now Saturday. How comfortable are we, putting... I think there is a distinct 1-2 here. I think last year, Haley and Ev were 1A, 1B. I think there's a 1-2 here. Yeah, they got to put games away earlier. If anything, media begins with me, so I can get a head start on writing these gamers a little quicker, and not have to toss any away. 3 stars for the UMD women's hockey team to start. Zach, I'll let you start. Who are your 3 stars so far of this season?
If it's not the 3 that we just talked about, Kramer, Van Wieren, and Gascon, then the other 2 players I think that I would put into that mix are Mary Kate O'Brien. I think she's been very good to start this season in the forward group, and Hannah Baskin. I think probably I would say the 3 I mentioned first are probably the 3 stars, but O'Brien and Baskin I think probably deserve an honorable mention.
I would agree. I was going to make sure Hannah Baskin got mentioned. I really like the way she's been playing. Seeing it in person this weekend for the first time was, I thought she stood out on the back end. She moves the puck really well. She's a good defender, and she is off to a good start this season. So she was the one I wanted to make sure got shouted out there. But besides that, it's the 3 that we've talked about, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so I have Kramer, Ev Gascon, 929 save percentage. That's with Wisconsin putting pucks past her. She's got a shutout, 235 save percentage, and Clara Van Wieren. That's my first star. She's got 4 goals, 4 assists. Like, that is exactly what you're looking for out of a 5th-year senior captain leading the team. I know we talk a lot about the offensive abilities of Caitlin Kramer, but you want Clara Van Wieren stepping up and doing what she's doing.
Well, we talked before the season about, does this team have a bona fide goal scorer, somebody that you can put over the boards in a 1-0 game in the third period when you need a goal, whether you're trailing or trying to extend your lead. Clara Van Wieren and Caitlin Kramer through 8 games.
They got 2 right now.
Those are 2 bona fide goal scorers that they have right now, and then the rest of the team is doing their job in secondary scoring. So if that keeps up, then I like where it's headed.
Yeah, you said you wanted 20 goal scorers. You've got 2 that are on pace.
Yeah.
So,
all right, moving on to the men's team. We warned at the start of the season there could be some struggles. We warned y'all, and some of you obviously didn't listen. It doesn't help that. And I think this is huge. It doesn't help that UMD is without one of its top freshmen to start the season. Max Plant is out with an upper body injury. Best case scenario, based on the timeline that Scott Sandlin gave a few weeks ago, but I still don't know how confident he was in that timeline. I feel like he was just throwing it out there. I actually liked his original timeline of a while. I'm okay. I know everyone wants timelines on injuries, but
I couldn't believe he said it.
Yeah, he gave a timeline. Yeah. Scott brought it up himself. I'm still not confident that that's the timeline. But it looks like best case scenario, Max Plant is back against either North Dakota or Miami. Otherwise, it might not be till the Arizona State series. Maybe they got to hold him out for the rest of this first half. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. Injuries are fickle. But anyways, the men are off to a 1-4 start after getting swept by what I thought was a very, very good Minnesota team.
Yes.
I do not blame the person that gave Minnesota a first place vote in the USCHO poll this week. Would love to talk to the person still voting for Cornell. Denver is my number 1, but hey, it crossed my mind. Maybe I should give it to Minnesota. Let's get the negative out of the way first. What are your thumbs down? I'll start with mine because I actually already brought it up. I think the Max Plant injury, that's my thumbs down. And these aren't necessarily like, oh, that's UMD's fault. That's just my thumbs down. Like, man, they've had some injuries the past couple of years where you're just like, I don't know what bad luck the program had or whatever it was. The entire team walked under a ladder at some point, but every year they're losing a key player to injury. Now, thankfully this year it's not season ending. But losing Dom James had a huge impact last year. And I think Max Plant not being in the lineup has had a huge impact already. I think it throws the lines into chaos. That first game with Shagabe and the Plants, man, that line was exciting. And you could see that was going to be a driver. They probably weren't going to be the top line on the line chart throughout the season, which I thought would be appropriate because they all play for Class A schools that everyone wants to see move up to AA. So a great troll would be just leaving those. Same as playing the Hermantown / War Road power play as the second power play unit. But it like Max's injury just throws everything into kind of chaos. He really is a key piece to that lineup. So that's my thumbs down. They don't have Max Plant. I think things will change a lot when he gets back into the lineup. Bruce, what's your thumbs down for the men to start?
Has to be defensive zone play. What if I told you that they would have 2 freshman defensemen in Adam Kleber and Ty Hansen, and they wouldn't be the problem? That's to me that, and it's not just the defenseman. When I say defensive zone play, watch that game Friday. If you can stomach it, go back and watch that game from Friday night. And tell me that you think this is a connected team defensively, because they're not. That's going to take some time. Some of that is just the natural. There's a lot of new faces on this team. There's a lot of guys in different roles than they've played before. So some of that is it's going to flesh itself out. But they were not good in their own zone. And frankly, Saturday, they weren't a whole lot better. They were better, but it's akin to being the nicest guy in prison. They still weren't very good. And it's going to be an issue when they get into league play in a couple of weeks. Because trust me, North Dakota's looking at that. They're thinking, we can take advantage of that. That's a problem. And I think it'll flesh itself out. I think some of it will get better over time. But a lot of it is some of these older guys need to start a little more consistency than I think is what you need to see, because the freshmen are coming. You can see it. It's just they can't carry it all by themselves right now.
Yeah. Post game on Friday night, Scott was not happy with Aaron Pionk and Aiden Dubinsky, despite the points the two of them put up that night. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. I think Pionk had
4 assists and Dubinsky had 2 goals.
Yeah, Pionk 4 assists, Dubinsky 2 goals, and Scott was not happy with the two of them, and they both admitted they were not great, even though they got points. They gave up some goals. Zach, your thumbs down.
I'm going to steal a word that Scott used this week or last week leading into the Minnesota series, which was moxie. It's poise with and without the puck. UMD was really, really panicky, especially with the puck in their defensive zone, to kind of piggyback off what Bruce was talking about. The amount of times I said a puck goes up the boards but not out, or off the glass and held by the Minnesota defenseman. I mean, I'm not that creative. I don't know how to describe that play many other ways, but I said it a lot over the weekend, and it led to 3 or 4 Minnesota goals, chances to make simple plays, to put pucks in areas instead of hold on to it, or a chance to hold on to a puck instead of just throwing it blindly. And it wasn't just the freshmen, and it was, Dom James did it in Friday night. It led directly to a Minnesota goal. He was on the sideboards. He threw it to the middle of the rink. It went to a Minnesota player, and I think that was the 3rd or 4th goal in the first period on Friday night. The
second goal, Joe Molinar had the puck, full possession of it during the Gophers' first power play, and all he had to do was flip it to the other side of where he flipped it to, and he would have had wide open space to get it down the rink. Instead, he threw it right to a Minnesota player at the point. And 10 seconds later, if not that, the puck's in the back of the net because they held the zone. And I made the comment, I think, during the first period Friday, and part of it was looking for some sort of levity watching this, and part of it was, what am I watching right now? Are we opening a bakery? I kept saying turnover, 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 and they're not even that good.
That wasn't a good joke either.
No, that's a terrible joke. But again, I'm looking for a moment of levity in a 4-0 game, Zach.
Yeah, and that's not to blame the weekend on Dom James or Joe Molinar, because it was everybody. Yeah. And it's not even to blame it on the older guys. Minnesota, yes, is a very, very good hockey team. They're certainly one of the best teams in the country. They're very likely to be a favorite to get to St. Louis for the Frozen Four later in the year. But UMD made it awfully easy on them. And Minnesota looked faster. They looked bigger. They looked more motivated. UMD just didn't show up on time and never really got to their game the way that we know this group can play. And that was the most disheartening part about this losing streak that UMD has gone on, is that's 3 straight games that the Dogs have not played the type of hockey that they need to play to be successful. And Scott has said this, right? Minnesota is a team that if you play well and you lose, that's okay in October. I mean, obviously it's not what anybody at UMD wants, but the fact that they didn't even give themselves a fighting chance in either of those games, really, I think is what, is going to stick with Scott and the coaching staff most.
Scott has said, and I don't know if he said it this year, but he has said it in the past in the non-conference, you play teams like Minnesota because they're going to show you where you need to get better. There you go. It was put out there for everyone to see this past weekend, and I say this is going to flesh itself out, because I don't expect guys like Dom James and Joe Molinar to make the kind of mistakes that they made that led to goals. I expect the young guys to make mistakes, so they're going to learn from those mistakes. And now the older guys have to do the same thing. But I don't think this is, with the group that they have, I don't think this is going to be a season-long theme of the older guys have to do more. They're going to figure this thing out. And there's so much competition right now for ice time, they're not going to have a choice.
Let's get positive.
Okay.
Let's try and focus on some positives, because I think there are positives with this team, despite what some of you on social media think right now. Thumbs up for the Bulldogs men to start the season. Bruce, go with you.
Adam Guyon. I am sorry. It's that 4-0 first period Friday could have been 7 or 8 if it wasn't for him. He stopped a breakaway in there. He stopped multiple breakaways on the weekend. And I think we are continuing to see that evolution. He is calm in the net. He's not busy. He almost looks effortless in his movements, which is great to see. And, it seems to me like he's doing a better job of fighting to find pucks in those scramble situations. That was a bit of a struggle for that in Lowell. I thought he did a better job of it this weekend. We're looking for signs of progress. Ignore the numbers. A lot of what happened this past weekend, you could have Andrei Vasilevsky in his prime between the pipes. It would not have mattered. They still would have scored a bunch of goals on you. I like what we're seeing from him so far.
Yeah, it's not often that a goaltender allows for him, when he was in the net, 11 goals on a weekend, and you say he was the best player on the team. But that's what happened this past weekend for UMD. Is I can't think of one of the 11 that he was in the net for that he allowed that I would say you should have stopped that one.
There's probably a couple that he would say,
for sure. But there's you are your harshest critic, so there weren't any obvious leakers that you say, wow, your goalie let your team down on that one. It was the team letting Adam down on most of the goals that were scored.
And the couple that I thought maybe he'd want back were still basically one-on-one opportunities. Yeah. Even if they weren't breakaways, they were one-on-ones. And I'm sorry, they've got some guys that could beat your goaltender one-on-one. You can't let that happen.
Zach, what's your thumbs up?
I think the rest of the freshmen, Bruce and I were talking about it before the game on Saturday even, is that, somebody commented to him, I think, that while UMD's best players are their freshmen, that's not a good thing necessarily, but I think it kind of is, right? These players are only going to get better, you would assume. They're going to learn to play with more pace. This is a learning opportunity for them, and the excitement that they have in their game, a lot of them, they're going to get there. And we talked about it in the preseason, I don't know if we expected it to look like this, but we knew there were going to be growing pains with this group. And I still stand by it. I think they're going to figure it out sooner rather than later. You can already see 5 games in, some of the wheels turning. Adam Kleber had his best series, of a young collegiate career, but I don't know if he was great, but he was pretty good against Minnesota, and that's 5 games in. Ty Hansen has improved. I think Zam Plant has really, I don't know if he's been distracted. I don't think that's fair for me to make a judgment on, but losing Max has impacted Zam Plant a little bit more than Jason Chagabe. It's impacted them both, but that line, Matt, you talked about it against Bemidji State. They were so impactful on that game. I didn't notice Zam as much against Minnesota as I did against Bemidji State. And I wasn't in Lowell, but getting Max back, I think, will help the forward group. But the fact that the freshmen are some of the best players, I think, is a reason for optimism at this point.
It is, but I told my wife, because she didn't watch Friday's game, so we're driving around Saturday, and I just said our freshmen are our 2 best players might be 18 years old, in Max Plant and Adam Kleber, and that's not ideal right now. Come January, it'll be fine, because these freshmen are also, to an extent, drinking through a fire hose. I don't care how good they are, how smart they are. There's a lot to put on them at one time. As they begin to make the adjustment, and you can see the comfort increase, and that's why I brought up Adam Kleber before the game with Scott Saturday, is you can see his comfort level increasing basically every time he steps on the ice. And that's good, because once you get in the league play in a couple of weeks, you know, a guy like that, you know you can count on him because he's continuing to get better every time.
My positive, my thumbs up from the first half is this team can score goals. Well, I know they had a couple 1-goal games here, but
yeah,
you know, 3 out of the 4 or 5, whatever we're at right now. Yeah, they had 3 goals against Bemidji, 4 goals against Lowell. And I thought, like, as bad as Friday was, like a year ago, if UMD was down 4-0 after the first period, it's over. Heck, if they're down 3-0 after the first period, it's probably over. Like, this team came back and put 5 goals on the board. Now, the problem is they gave up 3 more that night. You know, as Scott said, they won the second and third period 5-3. Like, this team can score. They can come back if they need to. They probably should stop. Now that they know they can come back, they should probably stop and maybe try getting a lead to start the game. But I do.
What's that? What does that mean?
I love how much that this team does have the ability to score. Now, again, you know, we talk about Aiden Dubinsky. Some of that is the defensive breakdowns. They're taking chances and such. But I don't know. I'm happy to see the team score. I think it's great. It was tough on Saturday that they weren't able to kind of come back when they fell behind. But I think that's not going to be an issue this year. This is going to be a team that can score goals, and goals are fun. It's fun to watch teams score goals, especially after the last couple of years where goals were hard to come by.
And I know we'll address it after the break a little more, but the power play has not done much of anything yet. So they're doing this damage they're doing mostly at 5-on-5. So again, that is definitely a good sign.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get to your questions. You're listening to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health.
Greetings from Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity, because here you will find curiosities. Whether it's a look inside the Northern Rail Train Car Inn or an introduction to Duluth's musical roboticist, Robot Rickshaw, we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. Each week, I'm joined by my fellow reporters who share the unique and fascinating stories that they discover while exploring the Northland. You can find new episodes of the Northlandia podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join us along this journey and discover the extraordinary stories that you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.
Hi, I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Explore Superior and Douglas County history with me on Archive Dive, a monthly podcast available at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Insider Podcast, brought to you by Essentia Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. They're proud to be the team physicians for the UMD Bulldogs and to provide sports medicine care to more than 25,000 student athletes in the community to ensure they can compete at the highest level while protecting their long-term health and athletic futures. Thanks to Essentia Health for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. I'm Matt Wellens, along with Zach Schneider and Bruce Ciskie. We're ready to answer your questions. I put out a call for questions starting after Saturday's men's game. I was a little worried about the timing there, but wanted to give people time to submit some questions. From Drew on Twitter, are the new guys overperforming, underperforming, or doing just about right? Zach, I'll let you start.
They're probably just about right. There's a couple individuals. I mean, we talked about them, before the break. Adam Kleber, Adam Guyon, that you could probably say are overperforming at this point, because I think they've kind of come along a little bit faster than the others. But the group as a whole, I feel like this is kind of what we expected. We expected some flashes. We expected some struggles, and we expected them to have to find their way. So, I mean, probably about right, but leaning more towards overperforming at this point.
Bruce, what do you think?
They're definitely performing. And I would, probably lean maybe a little more over. I think, what we've seen from Kleber and Hansen on the back end, Hansen's a competitive bugger, man. He's a solid player. The young guys up front, and again, not having Max Plant for all but one game, that plays a role here too, because a lot of, I think, the way you schemed up your power play in the preseason, the way you schemed up your top six in the preseason was predicated on having both plants available, and only having one, it's kind of let them a little scrambly in terms of how to put things together. So I would lean over slightly.
I'd say I feel like most, depending on who you're talking, like Ty Hansen, and I had talked to some people before the season that are like, hey, watch Ty Hansen. He's going to be really good. He's the most prepared to come in. So like in that sense, from hearing from some insiders and stuff, I'm not totally surprised, but I'll still say like I think he's better than advertised. He's really good on the back end. Kleber is still, I think he's about where he is. He's 18. So anyone that thought Kleber was going to come in and maybe be like Nick Wolf right from the start, that wasn't going to happen. But you definitely see the potential in Kleber, and he's getting better every game. I think that's the big thing. You're seeing a lot of these freshmen get better every game. And again, the Max Plant is the wild card, right? If he's in the lineup, I think things are way different. From Angel on Twitter, will we see Clayton Knapp play at all, or just keep playing Adam Guyon? I hope we see Knapp against Stonehill. I really hope we see him one of those games there. I think, like we've talked about, I don't think you can have Guyon play 30, 40 games this season. Watching Zach Sandy against Bemidji State, that's a game where they probably don't win it if Guyon or someone is in there, because again, there were a lot of hang him out to dry goals that I don't know if Guyon gets to all those, but you hope you don't have to. I think I'd be okay if they played Guyon 30, 40 games. I think they'll win a lot of games still with him. If he does what he does, obviously the defense needs to get better in front of them, but I'm curious. I also don't think it's bad if Clayton Knapp doesn't play a game this season and goes the Hunter Shepard route, where he kind of redshirts and then comes in next year. That's kind of the impression I get. But I have to imagine he's going to play against Stonehill.
Maybe.
I mean,
they're 1-4. And kind of what you were talking about with the women, right? Is, you need to win these. They need to. I mean, I don't know if they need to sweep them, but like it's a.
You need to win a series.
You got to sweep Stonehill.
It's a series that you go into and you are the favorite despite a 1-4 record and really getting run out of your own building last weekend against a good Minnesota team. Like if you drop a game or both against Stonehill, then these alarms that are starting to go off after you lost to a good Minnesota team, if you lose 1 or 2 to a bad Stonehill team, boy, then those alarms start becoming a little bit louder in everyone's ears. I think you got to go with Guyon at least on Friday. And if you score 12 and you're just so much better than Stonehill, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to. I think it's going to be relatively competitive.
Stonehill's a better team than what they've had. David Berard took over. He's a longtime coach out east. He's been a head coach at Holy Cross before. They were very active again in the portal. They've got players, and they've beaten Merrimack, who is a competitive Hockey East team. It's not like Merrimack's a bottom feeder anymore in Hockey East. And I don't think Lake State's that great in the CCHA, but they went to Lake State and split last weekend. And I don't think that they're 1-4. They're not in a position to take anybody lightly and just think, we'll just throw we'll throw the number 2 goaltender out there for one of these games. Now, if you're thinking, like you said, if we can take care of our business on Friday and win convincingly, okay, we can have a conversation about it. But I think you need to focus on Friday first and take care of that business before you have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the other thing to think about too, right, is these 2 losses against Minnesota, the score and the run of the game won't matter come March. And it's just 2 losses. And they're not going to be bad non-conference losses to Minnesota. Minnesota's going to be in the picture.
I think a lot of teams are going to have 2 losses to Minnesota this year.
So Stonehill might be a different situation, 1 or 2 losses to that team. And now all of a sudden you need to, do much better in your league, or maybe win the postseason tournament in the NCHC to have a seat at the table come March. I mean, that's a completely different story. It also might be different if some of these 4 losses were Adam Guyon's fault. If he was struggling and they were 1-4, then throw Knapp in there and see, hey, maybe this changes things up. But he's been the team's best player. You can't take him off the ice right now, I don't think.
All right, from Max on Twitter, outside of Steve's, what has been the biggest impact in the power play drop-off? I thought it was interesting. Was it Friday or Saturday night? They ran the Steve's play twice. Went right to Steve's spot. Someone should mark it on the ice. The Ben. Don't give Steve's the entire ice. Just the Ben Steve's Memorial spot.
I said if they ever retire as number 6, they should just put it in the ice in that spot.
Yeah.
Not no banner up top. Just put it in the ice in that one spot.
Dom James took 2 swings from the Steve spot and couldn't connect on any of them. I hate to again beat a dead horse here, but I think the biggest impact on the power play is once again Max Plant isn't out there, because it looked that power play, the Hermantown +1 War Road power play unit out there. Man, that was a fun group to watch. Again, Max, Sam, Shagabe, Ty Hansen, and Aaron Pionk, they can zip that puck around the zone, and you take Zam out, and it's entirely different. Or you take Max out. There's our first goof of the brothers. You take Max out, and it's been different. So yeah, I don't know if it's just that on the power play. Bruce, what do you think?
Even if you put those guys together, and I know they looked good against Bemidji, who's the shooter? Who's the guy that the teams have to? Who's Ben Steves basically? And not who's taking that spot. Who's taking that role, that mentality of, if the puck comes to me, I'm going to shoot it. I know Shagabe scored a power play goal against Bemidji. He's a pass-first player, and everybody will tell you that. And that's actually what makes it kind of funny. He scored 2 goals in that game. It's great, but can he be the shooter? Can Max be the shooter? Max, a pass-first guy. They can all score, but somebody has, to me, you need a threat. I don't know where it is in that group, and I think more than anything else, that's what's hurt them so far on the power play. I watched, the last power play they had against Lowell in the Saturday game was the best one they had all weekend. Zip the puck around the zone. Nobody shot it. And when they did shoot it, it was into a shin pad or it was off the mark or whatever. The Gophers, a lot of the same thing. When the power play was looking good, they zipped it around. But again, there's not necessarily a shooting threat on the ice. And there are some circumstances. I don't think Will Francis is necessarily ready. That guy's got a shot, man. And if he had not gone through it, he'd gone through off the ice, Will Francis would be a factor on the Bulldogs power play this year. But circumstances are what they are. If Ben Steves comes back, and I think there's arguments that you could have made that maybe he should have come back, but that's his decision and we respect it. But we also can't forget about Isaac Howard. Isaac Howard was brought in here to score goals, to be an impact player on offense along with Ben Steves. And he had a tough first year. He decides to move on. He's supposed to be a junior on this team. Don't you think he might be on that number 1 power play if he was here? And when you lose a guy to the portal, when you lose a guy like Ben Steves who signs pro, maybe a little unexpectedly, it's not like there's a ton of guys you can go find realistically and bring in here, because they weren't going to get Matthew Wood when he went in the portal. That wasn't going to happen. It wasn't realistic. So finding those guys, a lot easier said than done. They thought they had them in the fold. Now they're both gone, and you've got to cultivate that somehow.
Yeah, and the other thing with this group is it feels a lot like, even when Max was healthy for that first game against Bemidji State, the power play goal that Shagabe scored was a beautiful pass from Ty Hansen. And not every power play goal that this group scores is going to look like that. But they act like every goal has to look like that. They're trying to make passes that they should be practicing on the outdoor rinks during Christmas break against squirt teams. The teams that they're playing are too good. Yep. And they've created messes for themselves by turning the puck over, trying to make pretty plays. The other thing the power play doesn't have right now, and I think it's just a mentality thing of this is how we're going to score goals, is a grinder. Somebody to go to the front of the net and be okay just standing there, taking the goalie's eyes away, trying to get rebounds, and then they just need to be willing to get the puck to the net, Ben obviously was shooting to score every time from that right circle, but we've seen power plays, over the years with Scott Sandlin coach teams where you're not necessarily shooting to score. You're shooting to get the puck to the top of the crease, let it bounce around, let it bounce to somebody on the far side, with a wide open net, let it take a deflection off your shin guards. I mean, this power play, has a lot of talented kids on it, and I think they've been used to kind of whipping the puck around and making pretty plays. But when you're struggling, I feel like just throw the puck to the front of the net, get something to go off a skate or get something to, it was James who threw the puck against Minnesota. He threw the puck toward the front of the net, and Ryan Chesley reached out to try to poke it away. It went in. It was it's not going to be on any of Dom James' highlight reels, for the rest of his career. But it was a big goal at that point in the game because he threw it to the front of the net. And so I think this team just needs to do more of that.
And what was their best scoring chance on the power play on Saturday? It was the bull rush by Aaron Pionk. Where the hell did that come from? Bull rush that he made, and he clanked one off the goalpost. But you can't rely on a guy being able to bull rush down the middle of the rink. I don't care who you're playing against, especially against the Gophers. I couldn't believe that
Caitlin Kramer
happened.
could do it for the women.
True. That's a good point.
But they don't have a Caitlin Kramer.
No, they don't. And so, again, you've got to find that. And I go back to what Scott has said a couple times. They'll figure it out. These guys are smart players. They will figure out not just what works, but what doesn't work and how to get more effectively to what works.
All right, one last one from Max on Twitter. It's obviously early, but do you feel UMD would benefit from more set lines instead of shuffling? I think they would benefit from more set lines instead of shuffling, but you got to find the right set lines. Am I right here, guys? Like, they're not shuffling. Yes, there are some coaches in hockey who just can't resist the urge to shuffle those lines. Like, they sit there and, man, I haven't shuffled the lines in 3 weeks. I got to do it just to get the fix. But I think Scott went into this season with what he thought were solid lines. Like, I think the lines they had against Bemidji, they liked those and were hoping to go with them, for a couple weeks, months here or something. But again, that Max Plant injury just threw everything into chaos, and they haven't found the right combination yet. I think the big thing is they haven't found, where to put Shagabe and where to put Zam Plant to try and get them to produce like they were at the start.
And the other thing is when Max does return, do you put him back with Zam and Jason Shagabe? And if you do that, who plays with Dom James?
Well, they've tried a couple different things.
They've tried things there that haven't worked.
No, they've been so far from working. And that goes back to, Scott and the coaching staff have to react to what they see on the ice. And if they had lost these 4 games, 3 in a row now, and they were playing to their identity and they were close and they were competing. But the fact is they've just, Lowell maybe notwithstanding, you're on the road. I know that wasn't a good game on Saturday. Minnesota, I think, maybe is a little bit different conversation, but really it's 3 straight games where it's just been lackluster. And so to throw the same lines out there for the sake of continuity, I think is just asking for more of the same, right? I wouldn't be surprised to see new lines when they play Stonehill because it didn't work on Saturday. It worked a little bit better than it did on Friday, but it still didn't work. And so he's not doing it because he enjoys the high blood pressure or the late nights trying to figure out who's going to play with who. He's trying to give his team, the best shot to win games. And I don't have the answer.
I don't either, right? But, the top 6 to me, when Max comes back, there's a couple decisions you have to make. One, do you put those 3 back together? And then if you do that, what do you do with Dom? And how does Callum Arnott fit into this? Because he looks awfully good in the middle, but I think he's smart enough and capable enough to play a top 6 wing role. So maybe you move Max up with Dom, and then you do whatever on the right side, and you bring Callum Arnott up and play him with Shagabe and Zam Plant, which is what we saw in Lowell, at least on the first night, on the second line. And I thought the freshman had a tough weekend in Lowell, which part of that was that's a team full of 24 and 25-year-olds that leaned on them all weekend and caused a lot of problems. And there were some things they had to figure out. But there are a lot of things here that are up in the air, and having Max out has not helped. But, I think we've seen this from Scott over the years. He sees combinations he likes, he's going to stick with them. And if he sees things that are not working, he's usually not going to stick with them. He might come back to them later if he thinks they should work, but he's got to find things that work. He's got to find the right personnel in the right places. And that's part of what this is all about here in the first part of the year.
Honestly, right now, if you ask me today when Max comes back and is healthy again, I would put the Plants and Shogaway back together, and I would put Matthew Perkins and probably Blake Betchen on the top line with Dom James. And Matthew Perkins has not had a good start to his year, right? And he needs to make that step forward. But when he's going, he can be a guy that can play in that spot. And Betchen has come along. He's another of those freshmen that maybe not as heralded as some of the others, but he's had a decent start to his collegiate career. But I want to see Plant Shogaway, if I'm Scott, at least to start when you come back. But yeah, they've tried Carter Loney. They've tried Kyle Bettens. Those guys they don't
I think
complement Dom James' game enough to be on that line.
I think Bettens and Loney are phenomenal third and fourth line
They're
guys.
good at what
like
they're
when
good
I
at.
see those guys on the third and fourth line, I'm like, that's a really good third and fourth line. I like Zach's lines. Like, I think you got to put the Plants and Shogaway back together to see if they can start clicking. Because I also like Zam in the middle. I like Dom as your number one center. I like Zam as your number two. Because when I look at, again, Arnott, Jack Smith, Braden Fisher, I think those are all 3-4 centers. So
Arnott has flashed in the first couple games, so I wouldn't mind it. But then you're left with Jack Smith and Braden Fisher probably as your 3-4. Since they moved Loney to a wing, which isn't bad. I don't think those guys have played poorly to start the year necessarily, but those guys are more like the Bettens and the Loneys of the world. They are who they are, and they can be really valuable if they play how they need to in the right spot in the lineup, right?
And I also wouldn't be shocked if we saw James Plant when Max comes back. It would not shock. I don't know which one you put on the offside, but it would not shock me if we didn't see that at some point. Because again, I feel like you have to give Dom not just people he can trust, but people that can consistently make plays. And both those guys can make plays. And I think I think those three mesh pretty well together if you tried that out. And it would not stun me at all if we saw it. And I think Western Michigan's probably worst case for Max. Reading the tea leaves, I'm fingers crossed. Sorry, Suze, if you're listening. I'm hoping that's the case. And give him a couple of series before break. That'd be great. But either way, I think you're going to eventually see him try that.
Maybe. It's just a matter of, does he think that line can be the line, right? Because if you do that, you're almost committing to being a one-scoring line team. And if those three can produce enough to win games like that, then fine. But I don't know right now that Jason Shogaway is enough to drive that second line. But maybe
Blake Betchen by then is ready to do that. Maybe Harper Bentz is ready to step in and help do that. Because I can tell you, they're not far off.
Right.
They're both nice. They're both nice young pieces that might not be here were it not for some losses in the portal in the offseason. But I think they both come along real nicely so far. So we don't know what that's going to look like by the time Max gets back, because it's still going to be probably a couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we are going to wrap it up there. That's all the time we have on this week's episode of the Bulldog Insider Podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, subscribe, and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/Bulldog Insider. Subscribe to gain access to all of our coverage all season long. The women are off this week. Laura Schuler said they're going to be doing some recruiting and watching some video. The men, as we said, are hosting Stonehill. And if you're asking right now, and if you've been asking throughout this podcast, who is Stonehill? What is a Stonehill? I'm writing something up to help, because I heard a lot of that this week of, who is that an exhibition? Who are they?
Random Canadian university of some description.
Yeah. Who is Stonehill? So, Zach, where can people who are dying to watch Stonehill this weekend?
Yeah, we might come with some like encyclopedia, knowledge at the beginning of this is where it's located. We'll have a map locator for Stonehill for people. But no, 7:00 Friday, 6:00 Saturday for the games against Stonehill on My 9.
Thanks to our sponsor, Essentia Health, for their support of the Bulldog Insider Podcast, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch you next week.